T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Trap Talk Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Welcome to All Monitor Talk. I'm your host, Kat, and with me is Mike Stefani. Please do me a favor and drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy this podcast. Welcome, guys. I'm excited. Mike, take it away.
Hey, how you guys doing? Okay, here we go with the USARK. So there's a lot of stuff always coming down the pipe, and everybody's got to get out there and support USARK. They fight for our rights to keep these animals that we love and nurture. And, you know, these unscrupulous fun police, legislatures, whatever, they're coming at us hard and heavy. So join USARK today at any level you want and help support us. Thank you. And today we got a longtime buddy, Andrew Llewellyn. Hi, Andrew. How you doing?
Hey, guys. What's going on?
Hey, good afternoon.
Yeah. So today, I know your area of expertise. I know you're a well-educated man, and you know a lot about a lot. So, but we'll keep this kind of focused on your specialty, which I would like to say is probably African varanids and the Indicus complex. So, Without further ado, earlier in the week, Kat had put up a Facebook post about being bitten. What do you think would be worse, a tricolor or an ornate? And, you know, I wanted to chime in, but I knew we were going to have this show. So I figured, you know what, I'll wait for the show. So, I guess the worst bite I ever had, which is really, you know, I'm not big on handling my animals. So I got nailed by a stimulus monitor unexpectedly. And man, that little bastard, you know, they're dwarf monitors. They don't have any significant teeth, but the tenacity of this little fucker, he bit me, and then he wouldn't let go, but he'd release his grip a little bit. And then, you know, I'd make a move and he'd clamp down harder. And this went on for like 10 minutes. And I was just like, what the hell? But the surprise of the bite, I tensed up. You know how you get that like scared shock? So I tensed up, and, you know, Uncle Mike's getting old. It blew out my sciatica nerve. So all my buddies at work were like, yeah, a lizard did that. I'm like, yeah, it did. So, I guess there's two categories of a bite that we think about. We think about, you know, the slashing of teeth. And then, of course, there's the anticoagulant properties to their saliva that you bleed and bleed and bleed. And then when I was thinking about that, of course, nobody wants to be slashed and their nerves damaged and whatnot. But I was thinking about the crushing power of like an ornate. You know, that's next level crushing. But Andrew backstage here was kind of saying with his ornates at home, literally you got to put your finger in their mouth, and they generally don't want to bite you, but they'll tail whip you and bluff and hiss. So, let's discuss a bite.
Yeah, so like with the ornates, the little guys, like right out of the egg, they're not really nippy, kind of keep to themselves. They hit like a 4 to 6 month period where it's kind of like the equivalent of human terrible twos. That's when they're going to bite you if they're going to bite. And they do the same thing you were talking about with the stimulus, where they'll just bite, clamp down, and then they'll sort of relieve the pressure a little bit. And then as soon as you go to move, they clamp down again. Nice little trick, though. Just keep a little bit of vinegar, put it on your other finger right in the corner of their mouth. They'll let go immediately.
Nice.
It doesn't hurt them. Alcohol, do the same thing. Alcohol can be a little damaging to their gums, though. Vinegar is just astringent. They don't like it. It'll get a sneak off you, too. So I always keep a little bit of vinegar, Plus, you can clean with it. The big ornates, they don't bite. I mean, I guess if you got them in a position where you were trying to physically restrain them and they were just thrashing, you might get bit, but they'll tail whip you every single day. Good day, bad day, they don't care. You're getting the tail. But the adults, yeah, you really got to just stick your hand in their mouth if you want to get bit.
Right.
That said, I have been bit by, I guess she was like maybe 5.5 foot. She grabbed my forearm when I was pulling her eggs out last year and bit, clamped down, and let go, and immediately went back into the sideways posture, tail whipping. It bled a little bit. It hurt, but I didn't bruise. Was a little stiff, had the same type of stiffness I've gotten with like black darts. I think it's a polydactylus monitor thing where their venom, it almost makes you lock up like tetanus. Like your hand gets all,
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Not paralyzed, but like pseudo paralytic.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. So, okay, before we get any deeper, Andrew, please, I find this really interesting about a guy like you, how well educated you are. So, let us know what your accolades are.
So I got my bachelor's in biology. I got my master's in conservation and wildlife management. Done some research, published on a couple of papers. The main body of work I did was on the eastern hellbender, which is a giant salamander that we have in Pennsylvania. We were doing mark and recapture where we would go out, collect them, tag them, do all the measurements, and then recapture as many as we could to try to see what the population size was, as they took a big hit during acid mine drainage runoff from the Rust Belt and from runoff from pesticides. So what we did find over that period of time was that the animals were making quite a recovery, and because they are lungless salamanders, they breathe exclusively through their skin. They're very susceptible to any water quality that isn't like perfect. So the fact that we were finding them in areas that were previously contaminated was a really good indicator that the environment was making a recovery. Right now, I serve as a wildlife biologist for a wildlife exclusion and removal company. We do, I think, 13 states, and I'm the biologist for this part of Pennsylvania, Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, part of Northern Virginia. I also serve as sort of a consultant basis for especially the African monitors for zoos. I work with the ZAA, I work with a bunch of local authorities, and I'm always the dumping ground for anything that they come across that the Humane Society or SPCA or local zoo doesn't want. They send it to Andrews. So I end up with a lot of ball pythons, bearded dragons, and ironically enough, water monitors. I got a ton of them.
Yeah. Water monitors?
Yeah, males. So we're down. We've rehomed a few of them. At one point, we had 9 in the 4 to 6 foot range. All boys. Every single one's been a male, and they're just typical Sumatrans, but they're found. We get them pulled out of places like New York City, which you're not allowed to have them. So they ship them out of state, quote unquote, so that they're not destroyed, and they usually end up with me.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, I see a lot of savanna monitors. People are always trying to give me savanna monitors and, well, bearded dragons, ball pythons, leopard geckos, all that stuff.
Yep.
It happens. Yeah, right now I've got that black roughneck. I brought it back from Daytona. She's looking great, by the way. I don't know you guys.
Yeah, no, I've been following. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, her mouth is like all completely healed up, and no more pockets of pus in where her teeth used to be. So hopefully the teeth grow back. So she'll be ready to be sent to her forever home pretty soon, I think. Because I'm not keeping her. Yeah. I don't need to keep anymore.
Yeah. Well,
There's only so much space.
yeah,
I know, right? I know.
that's kind of depressing because are you coming to Tinley, Cat?
No, I'm not going to be
Oh,
able to because I took so much leave from my job and I'm trying
I
to
got
save
you.
what little bit I got left for whenever my brother has his baby, which is really soon. Otherwise, I would if I could take the time off if they would let me, but
Now, how
maybe.
about you? How about you, Andrew? Are you coming?
Yep. Yeah, I already put in all for it, so I will. I know. I'm pretty sure if I don't show up to Tinley, Brian's gonna kill me. So
I was
Oh,
just going to say, man, I was just going to say, of course, any show talking about African monitors in general, if Waterloo's name don't come up, is it truly a monitor podcast? So with that being said, yeah, he'd been telling me for years, yeah, Andrew's coming to Monitor Fest. Yeah, Andrew's coming
I
to Tinley. Like, so please don't let him down, man. Don't let him
I
down.
I know the last two Monitor Fests, I like changed jobs right around that time and just couldn't take off. And then I think the last Tinley I was supposed to go to, it was the same thing where we had a guy, our other biologist fell off a roof and broke a bunch of his ribs. And I was like, oh crap. Well, all right. My workload just increased substantially. So,
Yeah.
but no, I'm good. I'm good to go this time.
Good. Looking forward to seeing you there. So
Absolutely.
now give us a little bit of your breeding success. And again, I know you bred lots of things, but Niles and ornates are a big thing for you. What have you done with both species?
So Niles have been doing on and off for like, I think 8 years now. Um, they're not the hardest animal to breed. It's more so you have to find a compatible pair.
Yeah.
The ornates were a challenge. So I produced. I'm going to use the term "produced" loosely because I only hatched 5 last year out of her clutch. The rest of them were duds. And then this year, out of 21 eggs, we had 19 hatched. So we did a lot better this year.
Very
Ornates
cool.
have a very unique breeding style. So the females are induced ovulators. They don't ovulate on their own. That's why a lot of zoos have had them parthenogenically reproduce, because they'll just keep them by themselves and the females can just, they can clone themselves. But in order for the male to breed, she has to submit to him. Well, unlike most monitors where they kind of wrestle around and it's, it looks worse than it is, ornates aren't like that. She's going for blood. Like, she's trying to kill him. My boys come out covered in open wounds, and I'm usually, antiseptic and liquid bandaging some of them because they get messed up. She fights tooth and nail, but if he's able to overpower her, then all of a sudden it's like a switch flips, and she's like, okay, lays right down, tail up, no problem. It's the initial. You have to prove, I guess. He has to prove to her that his genes, like, he's strong enough, he's healthy enough, his genes are worthy, and she really puts them through their paces. It's first time you pair ornates, it's kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm gonna do it eventually with mine. Now you're like scaring me. I'm already scared to do the tricolors. Okay, so let me ask. So, like, is the female okay? Like, does she have any stuff on her? Or no?
Nope. He does not bite. I've never seen one of my boys open their mouth at her. They're literally just trying to bear hug her and pin her, and she is trying to grab arms. She's bitten the side of his head. She's open mouth, like going for blood.
So, like, when you put them together, so don't be alarmed if, like, if the female is attacking you just let them duke it out. Like, but how do you know then? Like, how do you know?
I learned my lesson that the male must be a good bit bigger than her.
Okay.
If he can't physically overpower her pretty quickly, he's gonna bleed. And if you're trying to like keep him pristine, that's just not going to happen as a breeder. He's going to get hurt. And I do recall when a friend of mine was importing ornates that were not just babies, they were coming in at like 3, 4, 5 feet. The males were always heavily scarred, and we just thought, okay, well, males migrate and move around a lot more, so they must be encountering more predators. And I'm not thinking that's the case. I think it's because they're the ones getting the literal shit kicked out of them to breed. I don't know why it's so different, because Niles aren't like that. Niles, you go in, she kind of gives a little bit of a chase, a little huff and puff and hiss, and as long as he's persistent, he's going to get it. And I've never had them like fight. The only time Niles really fight is if you mispair them. So if you pair 2 boys together or even a couple of females, you'll get them fighting. But ornates, on the other hand, no. The second he's like kind of twitching around and looking at her, she's in defensive mode. As soon as he's within strike range, man, that mouth is open and she's going for him. And the males definitely know. Like, when I first did it, and I was collaborating with a friend of mine who lives down here as well, because he had the same thing where he's like, my male got torn apart. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how it is. We thought maybe it was the female, maybe she was just some sort of battle axe from hell. No, it's every female. As soon as they're sexually reproductive, it is just a different game. They do not tolerate any other monitor in their little space. And the second that I'm getting ready to put him in, she's just prepared. She's ready to go. I've tried introducing them in his cage. I've tried introducing them on neutral ground. I've even locked the living room off because we have the way the house is designed, the living room's pretty big. So I moved all the furniture so they had about 20 square open feet that they could run from each other. She didn't. Second he got near her, she went right for him. Didn't try to flee, didn't try to do anything.
No.
So they're just...
That's pretty interesting to think of, the guy. A lot of people, I want to breed monitors. Okay, well, what species? Because there's so many different, I don't know what. So, like you're saying, with these ornates, Mertens, I've noticed females initiate the courtship. My coming eye, when the females are in a cycle, they literally put their head down, let the male do his thing, and for whatever 5, 6, 7 days, and then that's it. However, if the female, like in the coming eye, if she's not ready, she flees, and she, if he's being too aggressive, she will, lash back at him. But for the most part, if in my experience with water monitors, when a female is in a cycle, she just gives up. She just puts her head down, lets the male do his thing, and I guess she probably understands that's the easiest way to get this done without too much, trouble, damage, or whatever. And like I said, with the Mertens, the females have always initiated courtship here, so that's like my sign that I know that they're getting ready to breed. When the female starts herky jerking at the male, I'm like, wow, that's fucking weird. And then, I'll come down 2 days later, and now the male is actually locked up with the female. But it seems they always initiate the courtship. So it's the different strategies of the different species. It seems that we're really starting to understand that now. But this is great information about the ornates being so, making the male earn his next generation. Like, in other words, if the male is a little weak and a wimpy, he's going to go off and she's going to, carry on and wait for the next strong male. And it makes a lot of sense, because that's the type of animal, like Brian Waterloo has always said. These animals are living amongst apex predators, big cats and just all the other stuff that's there. They can't be wimps. They have to be tough, aggressive animals. So it's a good strategy for them. And I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it will, if you're not prepared for it, it will shock people, because it is violent.
I'm glad you're telling us.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I spoke at length with my buddy Rob Foss, because he's bred them as well years ago, and he said, "Oh yeah." Like he was like, "Yeah, it's my boys get torn up all the time. The girls are just, that's how they are." I'm like, "Oh, okay. That's just their specific strategy for reproduction," and it does. It makes a lot of sense, especially evolutionarily. It's very metabolically expensive for these females to produce the next generation. I mean, up to 40% of their body weight is going to be converted to eggs, and where they live, especially ornates in the river valley of the Congo and stuff, there are predators everywhere. I mean, they live next to crocodiles. They live next to, not jaguars, leopards, and even the local humans eat them. So why would she waste any of her energy and any of her potential survivability on a lesser male?
Absolutely.
And she won't. She absolutely will not. God forbid your female gets real big. You have to find quite the boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I probably will, because Skittles is kind of big. She's kind of big for female.
That sounds like that's going to work to your advantage. Wait, no.
No,
That's your
you want a smaller female.
Yeah.
You want the smaller girl.
Yeah.
She's kind of big, she's like, I mean, she's always been big. She grew really fast. Like within the first year, she was 4 foot in the first year.
And do you have a male lined up, Kat, or no?
Yeah, with Brian, he asked me if I wanted that one male that he got in, and I was like, yeah. I just needed some time, to get everything ready here. And then, of course, I took in this black roughneck, and I took in another tree monitor. So I'm like,
yeah. Well, I like to say this to people that are really into the monitors. Face it, you're addicted. It's not drugs you're addicted to. You're addicted to monitors. So,
you know how it is. Like, I need to buy a bigger house, right?
That might not be the best thing, I guess you wouldn't say to a crackhead, "Hey, go get a bigger crack pipe." That's probably not the best thing to do. But so Andrew, with we were talking about the the African varanids, and I know you're really into the Indicus complex. What are you? What are you seeing out there as far as like the tricolors, the coli? There's these Dwyer eyes. What are you seeing, and what are you hearing about any of the Indicus complex?
So the Indicus complex is interesting. Even like I remember reading some of like the coli paper, and how they differentiated them out of just Indicus is very, very marginal. So whereas you have very clear separations in a lot of the African species where there's geographic isolation,
right?
Indicus genes seem to move pretty freely. The bulk of the Indicus that I have, I literally just call them Indicus species because I have no idea what they actually are. They look different, they act a little different, but I don't think they're that different genetically, and they can all interbreed. So there's no sort of biological or like gamete blocking for them to actually do that. It's an interesting complex. There are probably the most, I wouldn't say they're the most intelligent because they're not. My Indicus do some dumb crap, but they are easily the most aware of what's going on and like constantly learning their environment. I've worked a little bit with small primates, and they remind me of like a scaly little monkey because they're always kind of looking around and like figuring things out. The adult, I shouldn't use black darts as an example because black darts are stupid, but I love them. They're my favorite monitor. The first one I ever bred. I love them to death. I wouldn't trade them for the world. A big adult male black dart is like a dopey puppy. Like he doesn't care about anything, and the Indicus are just not like that. And I think that's why I like the ornates and the Niles too, because they're a little don't want to say twitchy, but they're a little more alert and looking around and thinking more so than like the black dudes are. The Indicus are super prolific. I think anybody who actually sets the time to work with them, like the coli. So I have a story about tricolors, and I'm probably just going to horrify Kat this whole time.
Oh,
So,
God.
and
Well, I
I
know
don't know.
I got Nick Lillis watching, and he's he's gonna put into work with the tricolors as well as Brian Duraca. So yeah, spew it away.
Well, I was going to say, I know Brian knows this story. So I had 5 tricolors. I have 4 now. I got them probably in like 2014, 2015. They were part of a drug seizure in Delaware. They ended up coming to me.
Wow.
The adult male that I have, he was an adult 10 years ago. So he's at least 13, 14 years old. He's probably a hair under 6 foot. He lives with 2 females, and then I have another male.
Hold on. Did you just say that they live together?
Yes.
And they don't kill each other?
Okay, so
Yeah, here's the story.
Oh,
there
God.
there were 3 females with this male, and I just kept them together because that's when I got them. That's how they were. There was this adult male, these 3 adult females, and then there was this other one that was by himself who turned out to be a boy. The lone male is super sweet. I mean, like, puts me in a position that I take liberties I shouldn't take with the animal because he's that placid. So I was like, you know what? Cool. I want to breed him. He's in his own cage. I built a cage directly next to his to do an introduction because the quad that I had didn't seem like they were doing anything. They coexisted just fine, but it didn't, saw no courting. I really didn't see much interaction between them. So I was like, all right, look, maybe they breed by introduction. Maybe introduction is the stimulus because that's what I found with all my other Indicus. My Indicus can live together just fine.
Yep.
As like a pair, I take the female out for like 4 or 5 days and then put her back into the exact same cage with the male. And he looks at her like, I've never seen you before in my entire life, and breeds immediately. So I was like, okay, maybe that's what we have going on with the tricolors. Built the cage next to her, had a window in between so they could smell each other and see each other. They would sit kind of next to each other. All right, this is going to be great. Open the door. She walks into his cage. The second he tongue flicks, he's super excited. The second his tongue hits her, she does a 180 full speed across the cage into the wall head first, drops to the ground dead, severed the connection between her head and her spine. They call it internal decapitation. The second that was introduced, and he didn't go after her, he didn't do anything. He literally just tongue flicked her. And at that point, I was like, and I'm done. So he lived by himself up until 2022. He passed. The adult trio, they've lived together this entire time. I found crappy eggs. I don't know how old they are. They were buried. That cage is essentially like I take care of dirt. I see the boy. I don't ever see the girls. I have to physically go in there like once every 6 months. I want to see them just to make sure that they're okay. They're always fine, but they want nothing to do with me. So I've just kind of left them there. The big boy's getting a little geriatric in his old age. He's a little slower now, but
I can relate.
Yeah, that really, after that incident, I was like, I don't really want to do this. And then I recently got a small one that somebody gave to me. And he's okay. He's skitsy like they are, but it's a very interesting group because any other time I've talked to colleagues who've had them, the second they put them together, it's a bloodbath. And
I've heard that they kill each other.
They kill each other. So I've experienced that personally with blue tails. I've lost plenty of blue tails trying to pair them. But then you look at Brian Duraca, and he's had them coexist together in the same cage, reproducing wonderfully with no issues. So
I wonder if it's a compatibility thing,
It probably is. I know a lot of people who have tried to breed Niles in the past have run into that issue where they're like, my Niles killed each other. my male and female Nile that I breed, they produce probably 3 times every 2 years, so it's not quite every 6 months. They live together 24/7, and they're totally fine.
And no, with a food cycle to get your female going, or a brief.
So I think the reason I've had so much success with especially the Africans is not so much that I cycle feeding. I have a weird feed cycle for all my monitors, period. So like I don't feed on a schedule. They have a very randomized feeding cycle. So they might get, Monday or like tomorrow might be, they'll get a couple small items. The next day I might throw some roaches in there. Then I might not feed them for 2 weeks. Then I'll feed them every day for, 3 or 4 days, some small quail or a couple of chicks or something. And then I might not feed them for a week. And then they might get fish for a day. And then like, it's very random. But it's kept them very lean.
Yeah.
Doesn't really bode well for me when I have to interact with them because they're a little twitchy, but they breed really well. I don't have any of the issues that I used to have when I fed them on a regular schedule. I don't really think monitors should eat every day, or even on a regular schedule. They wouldn't see that in the wild. So I do try to switch it up as much as possible. And it's funny as hell watching an adult ornate or an adult black throat chase crickets. Like that is funny.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, Skittles is incredibly hilarious. Trying to catch those little, they're so tiny compared to her.
Yeah.
I often do it with my adult monitors, just for the simple fact it kind of stimulates their brain, and they move around a lot, trying to get this little tic-tac of a food item. But, whatever makes them happy. And like I said, more about, and I'm not saying like, physically fit, but just to keep their juices flowing, their blood going, and, circulation. A lot of times people, their animals become sedentary. And then, of course, you got all these influencers on social media with these giant football-shaped monitors. And I think it's so wrong because that's not a healthy animal, And
No.
when they're big and you never see their lateral line, that's not a healthy animal. So I can't stand when I see the influencers, just with these giant fat animals. And, people think it's just so cool. I wish they took a little responsibility and said, hey, look, here's my giant Asian water monitor. He's overweight, and, maybe point out that, but they don't. So it pisses me off at times, and then the whole, I see one guy out there, complaining about, oh, he went for the $15 kosher hot dog. It's like, dude, don't offer him a $15 hot dog, you numbnuts.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But, I think people need to take more responsibility.
So, hey, Nick just sent some cash. What is it? What do you call
That's
that?
a super chat.
Yeah, Nick just sent one.
Thanks, Nick. Andrew, you know Nick, right?
Yeah.
Nick.
He's about 2 hours north of me.
Oh, cool. Yeah. He's a great kid, man. I love that guy.
Brian Waterloo's watching us too under Mr. Clean. That's his name on here.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yeah, thank you. The whole thing with weight, it's part of the reason, like I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
Me too.
It's done wonders for some people, and it's done horrors for others. And the biggest thing is people take it very personally when you're like, you really should adjust this, or you really should do that. And I see it all the time. And I'll say this, with all humility, because I did this. Like I've killed animals because I was doing things that, I was feeding them too much. Even the Africans, it's a big deal. They have, I call it adaptive growth. So like a black throat can go from a hatchling to 5 feet in 1 year. I know this because I did it. That animal will not make it past 6, 7 years old. It'll crash and die.
Yeah.
And
they need that fasting.
but I remember talking to a friend of mine who's an evolutionary biologist, and we were kind of just, batting back and forth. And it makes sense that the animals would be built with that ability to, all right, there's food everywhere. The conditions are so optimal. I'm going to maximize my size very quickly, produce an insane amount of offspring very fast, and then die off. Because realistically, once you're at the end of reproductive viability, as a biological perspective, you've lost your value to the species. So my animals that grow much slower, reproduce later, are much longer lived. The original grandsire of my line of blackthroats is 26 years old. He came into the country as an adult, and that was in 2008 or 2009. So we're estimating he's about 26 years old. He's still kicking. And I mean, when's the last time you saw a 20-year-old monitor? I've had one person, and I'll give him a shout. His name's Kyle. That I sold one of the first Niles I ever hatched, and I didn't breed this. I'm not taking credit for breeding it because this came in an adult female who just dropped eggs. I incubated them, but one of the first Niles I ever hatched. He was super placid. This kid did everything right. Gave this animal the best life. He lived till almost 20 and died. He ended up having gout, but like he was going to do cataract surgery on him to improve his eyes. Like he literally would do anything for this animal. And looking back, I'm like, I don't know how many people that have had monitors that I have ever seen even get into the teens. I mean, most of the time you see them for a couple of years and then all of a sudden they disappear. And I see a lot, especially with the Africans, it's dead in 5 is what I call it. That's about 5 years because they've done really well. They're like, oh, they're great. They crash and die. And you're like, I don't know what happened. And their body is not really designed long term to support that rapid growth. They can do it, but it changes the evolution. It changes their pattern of what they're doing. They're just trying to get real big, produce a lot, and die, versus we have the animal for a long period of time. So it's something I try to explain to people. You can take a tiny little lizard and make it huge very quickly, but in the wild, they would typically never experience the nutrient levels and the calories to ever do that. So just because they can doesn't mean you should.
Right. So I like to say to people with these football-shaped monitors that, the reason that they're shaped like that is these animals are designed for times of plenty and times of nothing. So they build these fat stores, and, in the wild, they have to live off of those fat stores, so they shrink and they become, like in captivity, people would say, oh, that monitor's emaciated. However, that's a natural occurrence for them in the wild because, like I said, there's times of plenty and then there's times where there's nothing available. They live off of those fat stores. And in captivity, if we keep overfeeding them and giving them too much calories, they build these fat stores. And if they never deplete those fat stores, it runs into kidney issues and then eventually to shutting down the kidneys and the liver. So,
they get fatty liver disease. I mean, that's super common. I've seen it in Savannah monitors a lot because people
absolutely. Well, it seems that the African monitors, especially, are really designed for that feast and famine lifestyle.
Yes.
So to keep them heavy is detrimental to their long-term longevity.
Yes. Yes, especially, I mean, and I see a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to breed these guys. And I'm like, I say all the time, fat boys don't breed.
No.
They just don't. It makes them lazy. It also slightly acidifies them, which is not good for sperm production. And the leaner, more active male is the one who's typically going to breed better. Girls, you can sort of get away with it a little more because if they breed, they convert so much of that into, I mean, you've seen it. The females literally just, their tail sucks in. They lose all that they have when they're making eggs. But the boys don't have that. It's not, sperm is very cheap to make metabolically versus ova. So Also, knowing what animal you have and what they need is a big deal, which I know can be problematic in monitors because a lot of times you don't know what sex it is until it's much older. But caring for them and supporting them the right way from the beginning is huge. And it makes me sad when I see, like, especially the big guys just get kicked around from home to home to home. And I'm like, that's not good for the animal, especially because, I mean, as we were saying before the show started, Kat, your ornate knows very clearly the difference between you and your daughter.
Oh yeah.
They do form. It's not like an emotional bond like some people, you know,
think.
They like to anthropomorphize them, but they do form an attachment. They know who you are. You're familiar. You're the source of my food. I know I know what you're gonna do, what you're not gonna do. And then when a new person comes in, they're like, we don't know anything about you. I don't know if you're coming into my enclosure to hurt me. I don't know, you know, and that's a lot for an animal to learn, especially if they've been in, you know, this situation for X amount of years and now they're being moved. It just becomes, you see the adults have a much harder time adjusting, whereas the young ones are a little more plastic in that respect.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, you know, I'm just a regular guy. I'm a retired cement finisher. I don't have all the knowledge that you have. I have my like hands-on experience, but you know, I preach so much of this grocery store diets and you know why it doesn't work, and you know the fat stores in these animals. So to actually hear it from a guy who understands the inner workings of these animals, like I'm just spewing my thoughts, and you're telling me biologically what's actually going on inside these animals. So this conversation to me is so refreshing. Thank you, Andrew. But
you're welcome.
Yeah.
And also, like, especially with food, and the biggest thing with the whole grocery store diet, so these animals are designed to eat whole prey. Their digestive system works on the basis of breaking down an entire organism. We've all cleaned up monitor pill. Like, there's nothing left in there. It is just remnants. Like, they break down bone, fur, all of it gets broken down, but it's broken down in stages. When they're fed stuff like ground turkey and, you know, raw meat and stuff, the way that their digestive system is structured, it's pulling a lot of nutrients into the bloodstream very quickly, and you get this explosive growth, which people have associated with being positive, and it's not. It's actually overloading the system. And is it going to kill them to eat a bunch of eggs every now and then? No. Just try to make sure they're fertilized. That's the only thing I can say, and make sure they're raw. But also keeping the diet as close to what they've evolved with. Like, I think the biggest issue I run into a lot is that people think they know better than nature. Like, captivity should be an improvement of nature, but we shouldn't be trying to be like, we know better. All we want to do is remove predation, you know, unnecessary famine, because there is beneficial famine. I know that people, and like you just said, like, people get really weird about that. Starvation is not always bad.
No.
Sometimes it's beneficial for the animals, even for us. Like, fasting does do wonders for even people. I mean, I got plenty of extra pounds. I'll be fine. But the same thing with the animals. They're just in the wild. The situations are never optimal enough for them to be consuming high nutrient food on a regular basis. It's just not how it is.
So now that now I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andrew, but I want to touch on this point before I forget, because I'm stunad. So I tell people, like, you know, don't feed grocery stores. I converted it from processed foods to now I just say grocery store diet, because I mean, even a chicken leg is processed. It's not a whole prey. So I always say to people, monitor lizards are food processing stations. They process bone, teeth, hair, all this and that. And when you even ground turkey or parts of, you know, like the chicken gizzard and the heart that people go buy at the grocery store, it's only partially what they're breaking down. So they are food processors. So to give them foods that are already partially processed. You're taking that from the animal's biology. They need to break down all that stuff. So if you think it's cute, and I say this, and if this offends people out there with monitors, don't be mad at Uncle Mike. Look at yourself in the mirror. If it's laziness, so if it takes you 20 minutes to go across town to get proper food for your monitors, but your wife says, hey, I'm running to the store, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Hey, pick up some drumettes and chicken hearts. Dude, that's excuse my language. That's lazy, man. That ain't good for your animal. Go the other 20 minutes, get some proper food for the health of your animal. They need that. They need to process all those ingredients. And, it boils down to lazy. And if you're feeding turkey necks and chicken legs and all this, don't get mad at me for saying what the obvious is. You're doing your animals wrong.
I agree. And that's, it always blows my mind. People will spend thousands of dollars on the animal and be like, well, I went and bought the cheapest chicken I could find to feed them. I'm like, but that's not, you bought a Ferrari and you're putting watered down piss in it. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Well, I also
everything, not just the food, people buying expensive animals and then like everything else, they're cheap, you know?
Yeah.
Hate that shit.
Well, and I think it is too. So over the last, 100 years, 90 years, whatever it is, there was a time in the world, in this country, where we had free range chickens and, we had pigs and they weren't commercially grown with hormones and preservatives. And so over that 90-year, 100-year period, us as humans kind of grew along with that. These animals that are coming from the wild or haven't been conditioned to eat these processed foods, it's really, really, if you think you're doing your boa constrictor good, giving them a chicken leg, dude, just look at that picture. If you're okay with that, man, go buy a cat or a dog. I don't know what to tell you. It's just, we shouldn't be eating that stuff with all the crap they put in there. I seen a video one time. They had a chicken, right? And it was at a processing plant. And there were these guys standing there and they had these rods, hooked to tubes, and they poke it in the breast and they pump that thing up. And then they pump up the other breast and legs. It's like, what the hell are you putting in there? And now I'm seeing that and I'm thinking, why would anybody give that to your animal? And then I'm thinking to myself, why would I give that to my kids?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. The shit we do in this country for whatever, the sake of money, profit, whatever the case may be, man, we're our own worst enemies, man. Let's not do that to our animals.
Yep. Yeah. I have a little farm. We have about 5 acres and I raised, I have some chickens and some turkeys and stuff. And one of the turkeys, they're Narragansett. It's a heritage breed, but all our guys feed, just out in the pasture and on, the feed that we make. And I remember last year I did one of my turkeys for Thanksgiving, and I have 12 nieces and nephews, and they were like, this is what is this? Like, it didn't even taste like the turkeys that they were used to. And anyone who hunts will tell you wild turkey tastes completely different than commercial.
It tastes nothing.
Yep.
Right.
And it's incredible. And I'm like, it's such a shame that we've gotten to that point. And I understand there's a reason for it to a degree, just the sheer volume of people that need to be fed. So I get that, but we also can take better care of what goes into it. And it's the same thing. Your animal is in your charge. It didn't put itself on a ship and come over here and put itself in a cage. Like, you did that. You have a responsibility, as its keeper, to make sure that it's healthy and getting the proper nutrition. And the food cost is by far the most expensive part of keeping monitors. I laugh when people are like, oh, I'm going to have this and this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, wait till you do. And you're burning through, $400, $500, $600 a week in food because there's so much that needs to be done.
Yeah.
I'm like, it is what it is.
And electricity, your electric bill.
Oh yeah.
Is ridiculous.
Fortunately, I put panels all over my house, but I do not miss the $1,000 a month bills. They were rough.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I like to say to people when they're like, "Oh man, that guy sells his Mertens for $2,500. He's got to be raking in the dough." It's like, dude, hey, let me tell you something. I don't sell one hatchling Mertens a week. Or 4 a month. But I'll tell you what comes every month, my electric bill, the food bill for these animals. So don't look like I'm making money with this stuff, because literally if you balanced it all out, it's a labor of love, man. You're not making money.
Yep.
In order to make money doing this, you have to cut a lot of corners, and it's not right for the animals.
Right.
I tell people, because I'll get younger people all the time. They're like, "Oh, I really want to breed this." I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the most boring part of it, but do it. Sit down and figure out how much you're going to spend and how much you have to sell and produce every single year to break even. I said, for most monitors, adult monitors, you need to produce 15 babies to break even at whatever the cost is. Like, black throats I typically sell for like $500 to $600, $700, something like that. It's 15 of them need to be sold to make caring for mom, caring for dad, and the initial cost of 30, 40 babies hatching before they can even be sold. And I think a lot of people don't think about that, but if you have a 30 egg clutch of black throats, they're going to eat 10,000 roaches a week minimum.
Yep.
And unless you're breeding them or you have a very, very solid connection, that adds up very quickly. And that's not, I guess you could put it on a credit card or like charge it off, but like that's a lot of money that you have to up front. And that's saying that you had enough of them hatched, that they were healthy, that you're not going to, there's a lot of things that go into it. And I tell people, so I'm like, don't count your eggs before they hatch.
Absolutely.
I've yet to have 100% hatch. Like every clutch I've ever had, there's at least one slug, and sometimes you'll get a stillborn. It was super cool. I saw Brian had twin black throats, which was wild. Because I've only had twins once, and they were both dead in the egg. So I've never seen live twins like that. That was pretty wild.
That was pretty wild. So while I got a guy like you on the show, and Kat is our co-host here, I wanted to say something that I get a lot. People contact me and they're like, "Well, you sell your Mertens for $2,500." I see a guy on Morph Market's got them for $1,100 or less, and I tell them, people need to understand the reason I sell my animals for what I put in a lot of work, a lot of time. I feed them properly, and they have a much better chance of a long, healthy life because I'm not the turkey neck guy. I'm not the store-bought food guy. I'm not catching bugs in my yard for my animals. So with that being said, I like to say I'm never going to be the guy in the race to the bottom of that price list, because I want people to be successful with my animals when they buy it, whether it's a breeding project or just a pet. So, yeah, like you just said, Andrew, to make money, you need to cut costs. But if you're cutting costs, your product suffers. And people need to understand that if you're buying a $1,200 Mertens, you're not getting the same quality as I'm giving you for the higher price. I put in much more time, much more good food, and people got to realize that and understand it. Fortunately, in the monitor world, I think people are hip to that, because I hate to say it, but it's almost like keeping and breeding monitors is a different level of this reptile stuff. You can't really cut corners and have quality animals. So the people that are getting into monitors, sure, everybody starts, at the bottom, but you quickly learn, okay, grocery store diet, don't cut it for longevity and overall health. So that's kind of why I like where I'm at. I don't generally have to deal with those people who say, "Oh, this one's 1,100." I'm like, well, you go get what you pay for. So people are smart enough coming into this monitor game that they understand why things are priced the way they are. And if you're looking for something cheap, go buy an import. And I'm not condoning that. Trust me.
Yeah, that'll cost you more in the end, vet bills and trying to get it healthy, and
absolutely,
still, might have all kinds of issues,
Well, another thing I think people don't realize about prices, they're not only buying the animal, they're buying you.
Yeah.
Like they're buying your knowledge of the parents, they're buying your knowledge of the offspring. And I know, that if somebody calls and is like, "Hey, I have an issue with one of your babies," you're going to walk them through everything. That type of information is
invaluable,
far in excess of whatever the price is of the animal. So I wish people would look at it more from that prism, but this is an animal that realistically, if you're buying it, you should be planning on having it for 20 years. Are we really is the race to the bottom worth it for that? Like, I don't want my animal to die after 5 years. Like, I don't want to raise it, get it to an adult, build a relationship with it, and then it crashes and dies because I wanted to save a couple of bucks on, some ground turkey. Like, it doesn't, I don't understand that thought process. And it's a shame that it's like that, but we see it in things other than monitors too. I mean, I see plenty of bearded dragons with metabolic bone disease. I'm like, how do we not know that they need ultraviolet lighting at this point? Like, that's pretty basic. And even the monitors, they don't technically need it, but you show me one monitor that you put out in actual sunlight that doesn't act completely different than being inside. I've told my wife a couple of times, my ultimate goal is when we do the monitor building outside, it will be structurally a building but have greenhouse panels as the entire roof so that all the enclosures get real sun.
Right.
Yeah, that'll
because I mean, Kat, this, we're not getting a whole lot of outside exposure in Pennsylvania. It gets way too cold. I know I envy the Florida and Texas people, but at least we don't get
again, you say that, Andrew, and we're, as monitor people, yes, we're jealous of that beautiful weather. However, in Florida, I lived there for a few years, and I can tell you this, that outside keeping comes with a whole different set of
yes it does.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
William Powell just did a super chat.
Thank you, Bill. That's my grade school buddy of mine. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Yeah, we played.
Go ahead with your outdoor stuff, because it does.
Okay, with the outdoor stuff, I mean, I was talking to Ron St. Pierre several years ago about the Mertens, and I told him, I'm like, oh man, I keep mine like ambient air temperatures in that cage are 90 to 95, let alone super high basking, and he was wondering why he wasn't having any success breeding his, which you would think would be perfect outside in Florida. However, this is something I never thought of, but he said, well, those are high temperatures. And I'm like, yeah, but you live in Florida. He goes, yeah, but if a storm front comes in for 3 days and it rains for 2 of those 3 days, they're talking about 70-degree temperatures, with cold rain and wind. And, you don't never think of that. And then there's the whole fire ant thing coming for, waste in your enclosures. And, fire ants, man, those things they're terrorists. That, a colony of fire ants could, fuck up a house of people, let alone outside animals. So there's a lot of things. So I think what you're getting at with the Pennsylvania, even here in Wisconsin, if you had UV panels on a greenhouse type building where you can control the temperatures and, the beautiful bright days, they're getting UV, but you're still shielding them from the unpredictability of the weather, and of course, no vermin or whatever.
Yeah, I know a lot of iguana keepers So I also keep, Tenosaura and Cyclora. In Florida, their biggest issue is rats getting into the enclosures and eating the eggs before they can get them.
Wow.
Yeah, like issues that we don't think anything of, but it's a big issue there. And I always say to people, they're like, oh, Florida. I'm like, blackthroats, and I see this mostly with blackthroats, kept outside year round in Florida, they got about a 5-year lifespan, because as nice as Florida is not subtropical Africa. It's
Right.
not. It's not the equatorial Rift Valley. It's just not. They have a different environment. They get. I got a buddy down there, Kyle asked one. He's got a crocodile farm. He's on the East Coast, but they get cold days. There'll be days that it's only like 60 out.
Yeah.
And all the crocs are out basking in the sun. They can handle it just due to body mass and the way they conserve heat. But a 15, 20-pound monitor that's from Africa or even from Indonesia cannot handle that at all. And even providing them a heated enclosure, like a hot box to lay in on those cooler days, you're just putting a Band-Aid on the situation. So the biggest thing with Florida, the open space and the sunshine. It would be nice to pop the animals outside. Like my sulcata tortoises are running around my yard right now, and they'll be out for another couple of weeks before I have to put them in. And I'd love to take the monitors out, but even on a day like today where it's 78 degrees in the sun, it feels good. That's still not optimal. That's not their optimal body temperature.
Right.
And if it's not a very large lizard, it's going to constantly be losing heat, and it constantly has to, strive for thermal neutral, and it ends up not being good.
Yep.
The other thing I think people forget too is we're warm, like we are homeothermic. We produce our own body heat. These guys don't. So if it feels okay to us, it's way too cold for them.
Right.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree with
when I walk into some of my larger enclosures, it is brutal. Like, I don't want to be in there. I'm sweating. It's awful, and they're happy as pie.
Yep. I often wonder, like with my ambient room temperatures in my monitor room are anywhere from 82 to 84 degrees, and it's rough working in here. However, when I open up like my enclosures, especially the Mertens, man, I open up that and it hits you like a brick, and it's just like, and I'm spraying them or feeding them or whatever, and it's just like 5-10 minutes of that, and I pull out and I look in there at them, and they're like happy as shit, and I'm like, God, these are special. These are special animals to enjoy literally being cooked. Like that would, if I was to be sitting in that enclosure, it'd give me a half an hour, and I'd probably be passed out, shaking from hypoglycemia, sweating out all my good stuff, and they just love it, man. So we and another thing that really gets me about keeping monitor lizards is when people, like you were saying, I don't know if this is the proper word, but when people try to put human emotions into that animal, or whatever you called it.
Anthropomorphize.
Okay, if they try to anthropomorphize, it's like, oh, look at my little goober. He's sitting on my lap while I'm watching TV. Well, you know what? You're nice and comfortable with him sitting on your lap in your 72-degree house, 75-degree house. However, goober sitting on your lap is like, man, what the hell am I doing? Put me back. But they're like, well, he must love it because he don't do nothing. Well, you don't have him at an operating temperature. He's just going to sit there and try to produce some type of heat, which he's getting off of your body, actually. So people, when they put human emotions on these animals, I just find that so ridiculous.
Yeah,
mine love me, okay?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yours are different, Kat.
Monitors are just that they're not wired that way. You could make an argument that an iguana or a tegu could build sort of a connection with you because they're social creatures in the wild. So, all right, it makes sense. Monitors are not social, even when they're. I think the most social I've ever seen is like Komodo dragons, and they're on a group feed. But the second that food item is gone, it's fighting or they're back to being solitary. Monitors come together to occasionally feed in that circumstance or to breed. That's it. Otherwise, they live by themselves. So they have no, natural analog to build or form that sort of connection with anybody or any other thing. It's just them. They're responsible for themselves. It's just them out there in the wild.
No,
And
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
They find I find that what I see with the monitors is that they form, I don't want to say a bond because it's definitely not a bond, but they form an association with you, and it's either they form it positively or negatively. So either experience has taught them that you are a positive thing, you bring them food, whatever, you're not hurting them, you've been coming into my enclosure for the last 5 years and you've never harmed me, or and what we see a lot of times in the wild caught animals is their only experience with humans has been horrifically negative, and they just transplant that onto you, and that's why people have such a hard time breaking them of that, and some of them never do. They never break that.
Right.
I mean,
I think they learn to tolerate us.
It's a learned behavior, and I've seen examples of monitors that seem to actively seek out the people who care for them. I have seen that. I think that's pretty rare typically, and I have seen monitors that no matter, I've hatched babies that are third, fourth generation in captivity that come out of the egg and are like, I will tear your finger off.
Yep.
Some of them, they're very different personalities, and some species lend themselves more to one way or another. We see that like with Niles, for example. I mean, everybody's like, oh, Niles are terrible. I have Niles every clutch that hatch out, when I do hatch clutches, that hatch out, that'll come out, sit on your finger, and it's like a gecko. They're totally happy to sit there and hang out with you. I have Niles that the second that they open their eyes when their eggs slit, they try to latch onto my finger. It's more of an animal, and then looking at it from a species perspective, there are larger indicators for this behavior is more common in this species than others. I've seen people with croc monitors that are extremely tractable and walk up to them and stuff. Every croc monitor I've had was always good with me, but I would never trust it,
No. Right.
And I know for a fact my one was really good and I never trusted him. But when I was out, the last time I was out at Tinley, he got out of his cage and my wife had to crawl through our crawl space with a net to catch him and get him back into his enclosure. And that whole process went off without a hitch. And I don't think that animal had ever seen her before.
Wow.
So,
well,
that's
what?
spectacular.
In the past probably 10 years since I inadvertently started what I've been calling is my Mike's Monitor socialization caging system. And what I found is, and in socializing young animals or even older animals that aren't familiar with me and my house and the noises and whatnot, is like my son Angelino. He works really closely with me and my animals. And this kid he's very even keeled. He's very calm. And man, he does so good with these lizards. I think they feel like his energy. There's no aggressiveness in his energy, where you can hear me talking. I'm loud mouth. I'm throwing my hands around. And I tell people when you go down and you work with your animals, and I say down because my shit's in the basement, but you need to take, the wife's telling you to throw the garbage out 15 times a day and you don't listen and you're angry with her and the kids are yelling and screaming at dog shit on the floor. When you go down with these animals, I tell people you got to do one of them ohms and, clear your energy and go down there with a positive mental attitude, because, man, the way your emotion and like, again, this might be a human thing, but I think your aggressiveness and your energy, they pick up on that. So if you go down there with a calm attitude, they really, they work better with that than with an aggressive, energy.
Oh, yeah. I agree. They can sense that. You know what I mean? I mean, they're watching you. I mean, that's their job in the wild. It is to be very observant and watchful, right? So
Absolutely.
it only makes sense that they would be like that in captivity too, and just know. I mean, they can just tell how you are. You know, like if you act afraid, then they're gonna act afraid too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You can't be like that. But
So
hey, it's 110, just so you know.
Okay, yeah, I know it's 110, but man, I'm not ready to give up here yet, man. I got too much to learn from this guy. So, Andrew, what is your with your degrees and your the alphabet's hooked to your name? What do you yeah, I mean, let's hear a little bit about your feelings on that, your energy and socializing with your animals and whatnot. I'd really be interested to hear what you have to say.
so it's interesting, and I've never seen any sort of empirical data on it, but I know that it's been proven in iguanas and geckos that they can actually see in a spectrum that we cannot, fluorescence. And I don't know if it's ever been looked at how mammals, I know some do, but I don't know if humans do, if we fluoresce. But that is directly, in reptiles at least, linked to their emotional state. So whereas the scientist in me is like, oh, how they feel, they can pick up on your emotions. I know they don't possess that capacity in their brain, but there may be something that we just haven't discovered yet. Maybe they are able to pick up. I know the Far East and they call it, chi or your energy or whatever, but there may be some actual biological basis to that. There may be a type of, even radiation that they can see that we can't, that is based on your emotional state. I know mammals pick up on it like that.
Yep.
If you're, dealing, especially because I deal with wild animals, people all the time are like, oh, that raccoon's going to tear you apart. And I walk up to them and I'm very calm and I talk to them, and, people think it's crazy. And all of a sudden they're completely a different relaxed animal. And I've noticed that with the reptiles too. People think I'm nuts. I'll be like, it's all right, sweetheart. We're okay. And they act totally different.
Yeah.
I've been at shows where people are like, oh, that bites. It tore me up getting in there. I'm like, no, she's fine. I'm handling her and totally fine. And I think they do pick up on it. I don't know if I don't think they can pick up on the direct emotion, but there is probably something we are giving off in some capacity that they can pick up on. I mean, anybody who's got dogs, your dog knows if you're having a bad day, in a bad mood, if you're pissed off or, whatever, like they pick up on that type of stuff. And I think part of the issue is that we're at a point in the evolutionary ladder where we think we are the end all be all.
Yeah.
And we're not. Many animals have much more acute senses to things that we don't. I mean, the dogs can be trained to sniff cancer.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's in Africa who's training Gambian pouched rats, these giant rats,
to look out
to
not only right
sniff
I've
bombs, sniff drugs, and they can detect certain types of cancer in people 500 times more sensitive than a dog's nose. And that's a rat. That's an animal that most people look at and are like, oh, it's a lowly, creature.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's advanced intelligence.
I love rats.
And the funny thing is, they have it, and they've always had it. We're just, we're the big smart guys. We're just learning about what they've already had this whole time. It's ridiculous. Like, I like to think that, when, like, even us, I mean, men, and no disrespect, Kat, but men, growing up, you go from grade school and then you go into junior high school, and when you switch schools like that, you got to make your bones in a different pecking order. And we learn, like, oh man, look at that guy's eyebrows. He's got his eyebrows down and he's got a frown on his face. You know what? I'll wait till he's smiling. So these are the things that we use at a different point in our life. However, these animals have to rely on that to survive. So people who think, Uncle Mike's talking shit, he's crazy. Let me tell you something. if you're upstairs and your kids are barking and they're fighting, throwing food at each other, and everything's a mess that day, and you come down and you know your lips are pursed and you're frown, you got your eyebrows down, man, you don't think these animals look at your face and understand, maybe this guy ain't, I don't want to deal with him right now, So things we've lost in our development over, whatever millennia, these animals don't lose it because they need it for survival. So we got to take the human element out of animals and start really thinking, we've changed to become a socialized animal. These animals, they don't have to change, and they have to rely on their instincts and their prowess of what they're seeing to survive. So get out of what you think the little, oh, look at him smiling. Oh, I'm patting him and his eyes are closed. I'm like, you realize he's got his eyes closed because the stimulation that's coming into his brain is overloading him right now. He's not happy and he's sleeping. He's shutting out what he doesn't understand. So I think the more we get out of our own way, the better off our animals are.
Right. There's a quote, and I'm sorry that I don't know who actually said it, but if you could teach a lion to talk, you still would not understand him.
Absolutely.
Because the way they see the world, the way they process things, it's not the same as us. And it never will be. The way we are a completely different animal doing completely different things. And the best thing that I ever learned, and I learned it from a crazy guy who's no longer with us, Mark Bayless. Screaming at me as I was like this little kid in high school and telling me I'm a piece of shit and everything.
Wow.
Because that was Mark. Anyone who knew Mark, that's how he was. But he actually, and late Burt Langerwerf, both said the same thing. They were like, if you don't know what you're doing, ask the animal. It will always tell you what's right.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
I say to people, you have to learn to read your animals, and they're like, I'm like, they're talking to you. They're telling you what they need and want. You just got to get out of the human brain and start thinking like that animal. Well, why is he hiding under his water dish? Well, it's nice and moist under there. Spray your cage. You know what I'm saying? That's as a simple example. But another thing, since you were talking about this, Andrew, I wanted to bring up another, genius reptile guy is in my eyes, Tom Crutchfield. We had him on the show and he was talking about, and I'm probably going to butcher this. Sorry, OG. Welton is a term of, so like an ant sees the world different than a bird, and a bird sees it different than a mountain lion, and so on. You really gotta, that's pretty much what we've been talking about this whole time, is that Welton, that these animals have a niche. And they fit that niche, and they're so successful at their niche because they understand the world from their perspective. And to think, Goober likes watching the Andy Griffith show, bro. I can guarantee you, Goober don't like Andy Griffith. So we got to start thinking more along the lines of how these animals actually see the world and threats and joy and success. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a big thing too, especially with monitor keepers, mental stimulation. I'm glad that a lot of zoos are starting to add stimulation and enrichment as part of their SOPs, their standard operating procedures for monitors, because they do become destructive and they get lazy and stuff. They want to think, they want to solve problems. Like we were saying, even with the little crickets, I think it's hilarious, but my spinulosus, I've watched them take like one of their fingers and fish roaches out of cork bark. Yep. And they'll do that for hours. And I've watched, the big monitors that should look at, a cricket or a roach as a waste of energy, dig up a cage and remove stuff. And, even just going in, and sometimes it's hard with the bigger enclosures, but even just going in and throwing in fresh mulch or throwing in fresh leaves and watching them sniff around at all the new smells. Like it's a huge deal for them. And I think it's something that's really overlooked in the community, that these animals do need enrichment, and enrichment from us can only be so much because they can only interact with us in a certain way, whereas they interact with their environment in a very different way. You know, a bunch of new smells or, you know, a novel food item or whatever can really change the way the animal is feeling. I mean, I read a study not too long ago, I think it was a couple of days ago. They've identified actual complex mental states in tortoises that last months. So like your tortoise can actually be in a bad mood or your tortoise can actually be in a good mood. And they've they identified it in an absence in tortoises. Like, and tortoises are a different branch of the evolutionary chain, but as our understanding of systematics is that they are an earlier branch. So it would stand to reason that monitors can probably experience the same thing. And long-term, you know, displeasure or disinterest with their environment because it's just been stagnant for so long probably puts them into a position that, you know, and then all of a sudden people are wondering, oh, he's not really doing anything and he's real lethargic, and it kind of snowballs. And these guys are, you know, especially with the Africans, because that's my specialty. The average black-throat monitor has about a 15 square kilometer range. We're never going to provide anything even remotely that close. Oh, that's a pregnant pup.
Hey, I just wanted to say really quick while there's a pause, Amy sent a super chat.
Thank you, Amy. Man, Andrew, I got to say something, my man. You're people are throwing money at you, man. I can only imagine if you did this with your shirt off, man. We'd double up here.
Oh God, no, everybody would tune out. Nobody wants to see that horror.
Do you ever give yours boxes? Because I'll do that for my monitors sometimes. I'll give them boxes, and they just love it. Going inside of it, going around it, or just a stick from outside, you know, from one of my walks. And I got to rub all over that.
Since we're talking about this, I often I collect all my dirt from outside. It's weathered dirt from outside. So when I bring it into my house, it's fully bioactive. There's all kinds of stuff in there. I give them, I don't change it out, but I top off all my enclosures every 6 months. And they love it. And I've done bird nests, sticks, a handful of gravel from the creek, and just throw it in there so they can sniff around. The bird nest is great. They go in it. It looks like they love it. And then they start to destroy it. Okay. But you know what? In this conversation, you know what I'm really curious to do and know if anybody has done this, please, reach out or whatever on social media, whatever, here in the comments. You know what I'm wondering? If you took a dead, not dead, an inactive hornet nest, like they're no longer in there, would they, I'm sure when they realize there's no hornets in it, they're going to tear it apart. But I'm really wondering if they'd be apprehensive to that, or, I'm wondering what their behavior towards that would be.
They'd probably investigate it just like they do everything else.
But if you investigate too much while it's active, you're going to have a problem. So I'm wondering if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're wondering if maybe the captive monitors had an innate sense that this is danger or not danger. Is that
right?
What you're
just how they would react to it.
Yeah, I don't know. But hey, before I forget, Andrew, you have spiny monitors?
I do. I only have. What?
Do they all have yellow spots and markings?
Yes, they look like mini croc monitors.
Yeah. I have one that's turning blue. I have one that all the yellow spots are turning this turquoise, really light turquoise blue. It's super cool. I'll have to send you a picture. It's super cool.
Does it happen to be a boy by any chance?
No, it's a girl. It's a little girl.
And I at one point had 11 of them because I kept trying to get a male and they were all females.
Oh my God.
So I've never had a male. They're super cool. I've never had one blue. That's neat.
Yeah,
But
and like
no,
I've been trying to ask people, I've been trying to ask like everybody that I know, have they ever seen one that doesn't have the yellow spots or the yellow speckles and all of that, and everybody's like, no, they've always had, the yellow, and
yeah,
none of them have ever had the blue. And I'm like, yeah, because like she started off yellow as a baby, with the yellow spots and speckles. She started off yellow, but in this like past shed or so, I noticed, I was like taking a closer look, and I'm like, oh my God, her everywhere that used to be yellow is now this very light, like aqua or turquoise color, or I don't know.
Very
And
cool.
she just
that is
looks
super cool.
different. Because Nick gave me a male, and the male is beautiful. He looks like, the yellow, and he's got the orange head. He's just so beautiful. But the two of them, they just look so different now, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with it. If it's locality or maybe it's like a genetic thing or what.
Yeah, it could be genetic. It could be a locality thing. I know the Solomon Islands represents quite a cluster of different islands, and we know it doesn't take a whole lot of time to see speciation in monitors. It starts relatively quickly in only a few generations. So then maybe enough. You have a population on one island that they turn turquoise, and it wasn't selected against, or maybe it was even selected for by natural selection, and you start to see that pattern replicate. I mean, look at lace monitors. I still, for the life of me, can't figure out how bells is an adaptive pattern in lace monitors for the wild, but it either is beneficial or it just is not negative because it was never selected against, and it's transfixed in the population. We see that in melanism all the time. But albinism is detrimental, and you find the occasional animal pop up, but you're not going to see a transfixed population of albinos.
Right. You're not going to see breeding adults. So with this being said, man, there's so much I could talk to you about right now. I know we're getting long. You look like you're looking around like you got to go tackle a mountain lion or something.
No, there's a
raccoon.
no, actually, it's not even that interesting.
Come on, Andrew. I was trying to make you look more exciting than a raccoon. That's all.
Oh, well, I did have to catch an emu at one point. And that was interesting.
Oh, nice.
That's like trying to catch a little velociraptor. That was fun. But no, you see some interesting animals running around Philadelphia.
Well, we usually like to go an hour, a little longer with, like really interesting people, and most people are. But so there's so much I'd like to talk to you about. Like me and Nick, we talk every day, and we have our own, layman's, we don't have the credentials as you, so while we're on spinnies, and then I want to talk Togienus, if you have the time, Andrew. Do you have another 10, 15 minutes? Okay, great.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
So Nick and I and Kat, I never worked with spinnies, but when I look at a spinny, there's something really innocent in their eye. It's like almost, I describe it as like doughy, like a female deer, or a fawn. They have that really black eye, and it's almost very soft, almost non-aggressive, where most monitors, they got that little ridge over their eye, and they, some of them, you look at them and you're like, okay, I don't want to mess with that. But these are really innocent looking, almost like any of the frugorious type monitors. And we were wondering if maybe fruit does play a role in their natural biology, like maybe, I don't know, figs or something. Not, of course, not as a staple. But
no, they do eat fruit. They do eat fruit and flowers.
Okay, well,
and in the wild, I believe the one paper I read, the bulk of their diet was flowers and this one species or two species of moths.
Wow,
that was pretty much all they were finding in their stomach. My spinnies, they eat hibiscus flowers like it's going out of style. When I
Wow.
feed the iguanas and stuff. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to try that. I'll have to
Well,
try
yeah,
that.
so I've heard, and I mean, this is for you, Kat. I've heard from people in Indo that the tree monitors, the Persinus complex, also are flower eaters.
What?
And apparently, what they're going for in the flower is the nectar or the pollen. They don't really want the flower. So if you can get bee pollen, apparently the tree monitors love it. I've
Wow.
never tried it. This is what I've heard.
Great
but I will say,
observation.
I will
the
say,
spinnies.
I had hibiscus like plants outside of my house, and I would let my tree monitors, because my tree monitors are really friendly. Okay, so I could take them outside without, constraints or anything. I just let them do whatever they want. But so this hibiscus tree or plant, whatever the heck, I don't know what they're shrub. I don't know what they are, but they have the big pink flowers, and
Yeah.
so Emerald was always really fascinated. He would get right inside the blooming flower and tongue flick the middle of it a lot, climb around it. But I never saw him eat it though. He just acted really interested in the smell,
Yeah, so he may just have been going after the pollen because that's obviously where all the pollen sits.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I said, I've never tried it. It's something that I've heard, but I do know that the spinnies do like bee pollen, and they'll eat flowers. I get a good bit of them because all the stuff on our farm we don't spray, we don't use any pesticides or anything, so I know it's all safe. And even honeysuckle flowers, because they're really super sweet. Our hummingbirds love them. I'll clip them and I'll throw them into salads for the iguanas and stuff. And you'd see the spinny kind of cock her head and be staring at it. And the one day I was like, "Here, do you want?" And she grabbed it, loved it, sucked it right down.
Nice.
And
God, okay.
Great
Yes.
information right there, man. That's, in my opinion, I mean, you've been doing it, but it's groundbreaking. I mean, for people keeping these things, and you talk about enrichment. How about giving them what they need and what they desire in the wild? Why not do it? So there you go.
Easy, a super easy thing for enrichment too. And most people, contamination is not a concern because they're keeping all their animals together relatively anyway. But just take a very small amount of substrate from one animal's cage and plop it in the other one and watch them. They will then search the entire cage because now there's a smell. They don't know where it came from and they want to try to find out where it came from. And they'll search an enclosure that they may be extremely familiar with from top to bottom for hours because of one tiny new smell. And it's something that's so easy to do. And most people who have, a couple of monitors, or even if you have a bearded dragon, anything that's different, because their brain is so wired around their olfactory system that any new smells are inciting and enriching for them. And it's, like I said, it's something that's so easy and so requires very little time and really does a world of difference for the animals in captivity.
Yeah. Because becoming routine and mundane is really something these animals aren't used to. Whether it's stimuli for safety or for feeding or whatever the case may be in our cages, if we don't offer, and I'm not saying the puzzle piece with the little piece of dog food in it, but like you're saying, a bee's nest, a bird's nest, a stick from outside, a handful of gravel from your creek. Just throw it in your enclosure. And that's going to really get their mind going on either what the heck is this? I want to know what this is, or holy cow, don't come around here no more. But because it's stimulating to their brain, it's a good thing. I mean, they often need this.
Yep. Yeah, they're not. They occupy such a large space in the wild, and it's a multi-level system. A lot of these animals will occupy, like the tree monitors, they occupy from mid canopy all the way up. The Indicus occupy from the ground all the way up. And I mean, that's one of the things that I tell people with Indicus, because they're relatively small. I'm like, yeah, they're small, but man, they utilize more space than a monitor twice their size. They are all over. They are climbers, they're diggers, they're swimmers, And if you don't give them all of that, I think you're really depriving them. That's part of the reason I like the Indicus so much.
I agree. So I just had a thought, like, did you guys ever see when who was that? I think it was Kai that had the cat toys and the monitors are like using that. I think that's really cool too, you know, for like some stimulation, trying to get, you know, figure out how to get the treats out and stuff. And I've seen some other things too, like
like the
and you know,
like a mealworm in a test tube that they got to actually reach their hand in. That's all very cool stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it keeps them occupied for quite a bit of time. I mean, if you think about it, you know, the reason that people have such an issue with solitary confinement in prison is because you put someone in a box for 23 hours a day and they don't have much to do, they go nuts. Absolutely. And I think a lot of times with monitors, you see they don't necessarily go nuts, but they definitely seem to have some sort of, and this is anthropomorphizing it again, but it's almost like a depression where they're like, I don't really do anything.
Absolutely. You know? Yeah, there's I mean, they're in the wild. They like I was saying before, like we were both, all of us were saying before, in the wild, they have to understand that smell, or that, you know, hey, that monkey over there in that tree is, you know, he's got a belly full of food. He's just sitting there. There's no problem. However, they might see one, you know, that's in a mischievous mood. Now, if they got to be able to read that. So, you know, it's all based on survival and forwarding their species. So in captivity, we pretty much take all of that survival that they need to be well aware of in the wild. We take that away because, you know, we've removed the predators. We've removed, you know, along with removing their dangers, we've also removed some of the good things they look forward to in the wild. So it's very good to keep that brain active and going. They're not, especially monitor lizards, man, and they're highly intelligent. And we often say, you know, I just did this podcast. I forget who it was, but we were associating high metabolism animals with like a higher intelligence. And I forget who it was. I think it was Warren Booth. He actually said to me, yes, you know, higher metabolism animals have a different type of intelligence. However, don't sleep on the retic who's laying under the bush, you know, digesting a big meal. When he's stimulated and he's pooped out that giant meal, he just has a different strategy. He's not going to go waste his time lurking through everything to find something. He's smart enough to know, hey, I'm just going to sit here. And he's smart enough to know this is a game trail. I got to stay right here. So it's a different strategy that we see with high metabolism animals to, you know, these lower sedentary type predators. But just like Warren had told me, still in all, it's just a different strategy for their lifestyle and their, you know, their biology. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
There's different ways to measure intelligence.
Absolutely.
It's very intelligent to just sit there and conserve your energy until prey literally walks right up to you. And then we see in the animals with higher metabolisms, especially, you know, using mammals as an example, you know, humans have our resting metabolism. The bulk of it is going to brain activity. So there's a definite correlation between the higher resting metabolism and the more active a brain is. And we see that in all what we call higher level thinking animals. So in the monitors that have very quick metabolisms, it's also typically they're more active predators. Like croc monitors have to operate in a very large 3D space. And if they see a prey item that's, you know, 15 feet away, they also have to know it can go this way, that way. You know, there's actual planning that has to go into effect other than just, I'm going to run at it and hope that I get it.
Right.
And then when you look at lesser animals, or what we consider lesser animals, the most successful predator on Earth is the dragonfly. It has about a 98% success rate in hunting, which is unheard of for a predator. Right. And they have the tiniest little brain. but it's the way that it's used. And if you look at their resting metabolism, it's insanely high. And most of it goes to neuron and neurological use. So the biggest issue, I think, and this is with keeping any animal, but monitors in particular, is getting out of your headspace and thinking about the world through theirs.
Yep.
And things will make a lot more sense. Because, I mean, there's a reason that we rule the world and they don't. They do some dumb crap. And you're like, why are you trying to eat the light bulb? But
Right.
if you're, if you look at it from their perspective, well, it's not just a light bulb. It's a interesting smelling, interesting viewing. Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe you didn't feed me enough. Maybe I'm looking for food. Like, there's a bunch of different things that they can be looking at that, whereas we're looking at as you dumb animal.
Right.
But that's not how they're seeing it.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing that I would advocate for people is don't always think that the animal, sometimes they are just dumb, but don't always look at it from your perspective. Try to look at it from theirs.
Absolutely. Okay, so man, we've really touched a lot of stuff here. Great podcast. I appreciate your brain, Andrew, and Catherine too. Just one more thing I want to bring up. I definitely want to do 2.0 Andrew Llewellyn. But in the meantime, now that I got such a smart guy on here who would understand much more than me, I've sent a lot of shed samples off to Robert Spracklin, and he does, on a microscopic level, studying of scale structures and this and that, and in these studies that he's done, he's told me that the Varanus togianus, at a microscopic level, the scale structure, like the base of the scales, is unlike any other monitor that he's ever studied. And he really, his brain works overtime. He really wants to understand why this Varanus togianus is so different than anything else he studied. He's, obviously he's thinking there has to be a reason for this scale structure on this microscopic level that is different than all the other, and there has to be a purpose for it. So he was describing like coming eye and Mertens, whatever, very common, like almost circular base of their scales. And, some are more like boomerang shaped or what have you. He said, however, the Varanus togianus is almost like the carapace of a crab. So it's elongated and a little jagged on one side. And you have any input on that, Andrew?
So it's actually funny. There's a lot of studies that have come out that when you look at different evolutionary patterns of animals, that it looks like a lot of them are evolving into a crab. So it's funny that was what he's seeing. That's it. For whatever reason, that body structure, that biological plan is very, very, very effective. So
Right.
A lot of animals are convergently evolving that way. I don't know. I've learned over the years that sometimes the reason things happen is because there wasn't a selective pressure for it not to happen. And that seems really weird for a lot of people. But there are traits that we've found in animals that literally the animal has it because it showed up as a random mutation, and it
works.
Really, it not even so much it works, but it didn't hinder them.
Right.
And it could be just by chance that animal had another trait that was being selected for, and this one kind of piggybacked alongside of it. We've seen that in a bunch of species, especially in reptiles, where you look at them and you're like, I don't understand how that's beneficial. And it might be that we just don't know why it was beneficially selected for, or it could, like I said, it wasn't negatively selected against. Right. So it kind of piggybacked on another trait. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll have to talk to him because I haven't talked to him in a long time, but I know that he's doing work on the microscopic level on scalation, and I still have a sample from one of my original Indicus that we don't know what it was. It's been called Dor Indicus. It sort of fit the description of Rainer Guntheri, but his scales were beaded, like a beaded lizard.
Right.
And,
Oh, wow. Okay.
but none of his offspring ever had that trait. It was just him. Now, granted, he was bred to something that looked absolutely nothing like him, but I still, when he passed, because he passed when I had a tree come through our building, he froze. I did save a section of his skin because it was so unique. So I'll have to get with him and send it because I'd like him to take a look at it, because I can't imagine that. I've never seen another monitor like him. And he came in as a 4-foot import from a friend of mine who just does importing. And he came in as Indicus, like mangrove. That's all he was labeled as. No idea where he came from. Had a more rounded rostrum, like a blue tail. And he had like a nice turquoise pattern to him. Throat pattern was different. His tongue was split colored, so it was pink in the front, gray in the back. Had a line going through it, like just a very different animal. But
now let me ask you hypothetically: do you think maybe it was a genetic anomaly, or do you think this is a species that we just haven't recaptured, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think there may have been some sort of anomaly there, but I think we don't know a lot about the Indicus complex. The Indonesia is very vast, and if there's not a real drive for these collectors to go out into these very remote areas, there's lots of animals we still don't see. We're still kind of stumbling across species, left, right, and center.
What I find is really like scientific studies or research projects, and I'm not making fun of anybody. It's just we are really advanced now in this kind of stuff, and we're trying to understand these animals. And I see people who want to go study the croc monitor, and they're looking around. They're like, "Oh, okay, this is perfect habitat. This is what we think perfect habitat would be." So they look up at the canopy, and they fire up a rope, and now they put on their harness, and they're climbing up this tree, looking for a croc monitor that can literally run through these canopies like it's absolutely nothing. And they squeak themselves up there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this must not be good habitat. How about this? How about that animal knew when you were on the ground? He heard you up through the tree, and he just said, you know what, I ain't dealing with this guy." And they go, literally, they might be right next to you. But we just don't know. So I think in the advance of technology, like maybe the use of and it would even be nice if you can get a drone more silent, because they're going to hear that coming a mile away as well, too. And, we're just not agile enough to keep up with these animals in a canopy. So
yeah.
I think
it's funny you mentioned the drone, because Brian Waterloo actually sent me a video of a drone that was being flown around the Congo and found a massive, and I mean, this thing had to be all of 8 foot ornate, and the drone was only able to get within 300-400 feet, and the ornate just popped his head up, looked at it, was like, "Oh no," and went right away.
Yeah,
but they are very aware, and they're very smart. But that animal, you could be 6 feet away from it in a rainforest, and you would never see it.
Never know.
And especially because we're not really built that way, especially us, like in the in the first world, we're not built like that. When I did a little bit of research in Africa and in Indo, I was part of a group that was doing birds, but the people who live there and see these animals all the time, they'll pick them out from 400 or 500 yards. They're like, "Oh yeah, right there." Never in a million years would I have seen that. Yep. And they're just more attuned to it. And I think a lot of times we discredit the locals and their knowledge of these animals, and even some of their stories and their legends. Like there's legends in Papua New Guinea of croc monitors taking children, taking them right up a tree. And we think that's silly, but there may be some validity to it. There may be animals that size. A croc monitor that was in the 10 to 12 foot range could absolutely eat a small child
and hide from Western.
Right.
You know, and so what I'm saying now, what I want to say something. This might sound stupid, but I don't think so. Like Welton in the animal world, in the animal kingdom, like an ant sees things different than a butterfly, whatever the case may be. How about Welton for native tribes? And like you said, here we are in the West. We get a mosquito bite, we smack it, and we're cringing, we make noise. These people, they walk around with flies, eating the liquid out of the corner of their eyes, and they don't move because they know, that's going to trigger the bird that they're looking for their dinner, So Welton amongst tribal people, we in the West, in the modern civilization, we're so removed from nature that it's pathetic. And we think like, oh, we're smarter than these, people with the bone in their nose. Have people in a bone in their nose. They like what was that movie? That Crocodile Dundee. He comes to the city and he's just like freaking out at the lights and everything, but he does well in the jungle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
my junior year, the summer of my junior year, I did 6 weeks in Indo, and I tell this story because it really changed the way I looked at the world. We were at a little village, and this woman was actually the one who was leading us around, and I believe it was her oldest daughter died earlier that day before we got there. And she got up. It's totally fine. She got up. She was out fishing at like 4 o'clock in the morning, like before we were even like ready to go out and do what we were doing with birds. And she came back, and I remember talking to the translator, and I was like floored that this, she just lost her child. And he goes, she doesn't have time to mourn because if she mourns, the other 4 don't eat. And that was because I had never experienced that before. And like just the resolve and the way she saw the world, like, yes, she was sad, but there was other things going on that required her. That was very, very powerful for me because I realized that's like, we take things for granted hardcore. And it was an eye-opening experience that she just kind of surmounted her feelings and moved on because she knew she had to.
Right.
And that's something that just was very different from what I've seen here. And that's sort of the way it's been every time I've traveled. I don't travel anymore, but every time I traveled, that was one of the cool things about experiencing other cultures is because they do see things absolutely 100% different than we do.
Yeah. Can you imagine maternity leave for a woman in the jungle who has to hunt for food for her children?
I watched 3 guys from the Kenyan army walking around barefoot and like digging a trench with this what looked like a very, very primitive shovel. But these guys were insanely strong, insanely fit, and would like step on rocks and stuff that if I stepped on, I'd be like, damn it, and even the women, it was so this was in West Africa. Everybody's seen the pictures of the women carrying like bunches of bananas on their head, right? You can't imagine how heavy that actually is until you've unintentionally tried to pick it up. So we wanted a banana, so we gave her like $1 or something. Well, that equated to the bunch of bananas. This woman who was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet took these off her head and handed them to my 6'4", 250-pound ass, and I could barely hold them. And she like flipped them around like they were nothing. But it's because that's been her life and that's been what she's known and done. It's second nature to them. So take an animal that has lived, especially the wild caughts that has lived in the wild, has had to get up every day, make sure nothing eats it, try to find food, and then if it's old enough and fit enough, try to reproduce its genes. Now it's been put in a bag. It's probably been snared. It's been snared, by this big hairless ape-looking creature. It was put in a bag. It was stuck in a box. It's been rumbling for 3 days. Then this other big hairless ape-looking creature pulled it out of a bag, looked at it, and was like, all right, I'll take it, and put it in a box where a couple of the walls are this magical force field that it can't figure out why it can't walk through it. You know,
Can you
it's a lot to look at from their perspective. And that's why when people are like, I don't understand why he's so mean, I'm like, he's been through a lot. I get why he's not happy.
Absolutely.
Well, that and being sick too. Like, you know, I try to tell people, you know, these wild caughts, a lot of time they come in, they have like respiratory issues, parasitic infections, whatever. Well, yeah, because they've been stressed out this whole time, which lowers their immune system, you know, so of course they're going to be susceptible to all this stuff going on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
So other interesting fact about monitors immune system and their digestive system are dependent on their body temperature. So if they have a meal in them, and this is what a lot of people will run into, they have a meal in them and they're too cold, the food literally rots inside of them. Their digestive enzymes are not working because they work at a specific temperature.
Right.
Well, enzymes that are produced by the immune system to attack parasites, bacteria, whatever, if it's not at the correct temperature, again, it's not working. So you're handicapping this animal to an extreme degree. And even trying to supplement them, if the husbandry is not correct, it's not going to do anything. You could deworm them, deparasitize them, you know, treat them with antibiotics, whatever. If they're constantly going back into that system of the immune system can't work right, or I'm not actively digesting correctly, you're just fighting a losing battle.
Absolutely.
And I've seen plenty of imports come in that were never treated for parasites, but their husbandry was spot on and they did fine, you know?
Right.
And another thing people have to realize is that all species, parasites have been around since all animals have been around. There's always been some sort of parasite. Parasites evolve alongside the animal, and it's an evolutionary arms race. So the parasite gets a little better, the animal gets a little better. The parasite gets a little better, the animal gets a little better. These animals can handle quite the parasitic load. It's when you add the stress of captivity, when you add the stress of transport, when you add the stress of not being, you know, properly warm, and these guys are also in a very restrictive space. In the wild, if they have a parasite and they defecate, they may not go back to that place where they defecated for weeks, forever. They may never go back there. So you don't get the massive bioaccumulation of parasites in the animal. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, you're gonna have that struggle because it's an artifact of captivity. It's something we have to deal with because we can't give them 15 square kilometers to run around. Right. So you have to.
And with that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but along with, we're talking about importing wild caught animals, and like, you know, people don't think, you know, first and foremost, man, you got to rehydrate that animal. You got to get its kidney and its liver all back into par shape before you start pumping it with, you know, dewormers and stuff. People think, well, I'm just going to deworm my animal. You know, you're deworming a dehydrated animal. It's a death sentence. So, you know, hydration is way more important than deworming that animal in the time.
Yep. And all medications for deworming, if you read the labels on them, they are at least all partially nephrotoxic. They're all partially toxic to the kidneys. They have to sort of be by definition. That's what you're doing. A dewormer is just a type of poison. We're just targeting a specific organism, but you're still doing a poison. There is a nice little alternative. It's easier with herbivorous animals. Pumpkin is a natural dewormer. It works really well. I've also found that it works really well in monitors. Just take a little bit of pureed pumpkin, stick it inside a prey item, and feed it to them. And you'll
great information.
You will. So the next fecal move after that will be horrific, and I'm just going to apologize to anybody who does this ahead of time. But even captive monitors, because none of us practice aseptic technique, none of us are sterile. Okay, we're going to transmit something to them at some point. We go to reptile shows. I doubt most people come home from a reptile show, drop all their clothes, wash themselves completely down, reclothe, and then go into their, it's just, we don't do that.
Right.
You're going to have an animal. If you feed crickets to an animal,
Man.
you're almost guaranteed you're going to give them pinworm. Sometimes the cleaner little beetles that are found with a lot of dubia colonies will carry a little pinworm as well. Like it's not necessarily like it's going to kill them. You just it's something that we have to monitor because now the animal is in our care. So now it's our responsibility. We can't give them the space to get away from it or allow them to do what any sort of natural remedies they might do in the course of their life. We have to take that. So I started doing pumpkin a long time ago. You just have to, a little bit goes a long way. You don't have to give them a lot. And I will apologize because they're going to liquid shit the nastiest thing you've ever seen. But you only need to do it once every 6 months to a year. And only if you see them if you have a monitor that's totally healthy and then all of a sudden, and it's not a female, like swells up real big and you can't figure out why, give them a little bit of pumpkin and watch all of a sudden they're purging out all the excess parasites there.
Ugh.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great
It's
information,
gross,
Andrew.
It's gross, but it comes with the territory. I mean, last thing I read was roughly 3/4 of the human population has some sort of parasite that they're unaware of.
Oh, you know what? I've often said this because, since I was a little kid, I've always been playing with, animals, reptiles and amphibians, mainly fish, birds. But, I've been listening to these studies a lot lately, too, about, how we think we're parasite free. However, I think we probably have more parasites than we care to admit. And, a little purging every now and again probably be health benefit to us. I've heard that a lot of disease comes from parasite load within our own bodies.
Yeah, so heavy parasite load is attributed to a weakened immune system and increased cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone. But now on the flip side, there also is quite a bit of evidence that the reason that we're seeing such a increase in allergies in people is because we've eradicated some of the parasites that we evolved with. And our immune system, because most allergies are just your immune system going haywire.
Did you read the study about the pinworms? Did you read the study? Yeah. Yes, that they actually are beneficial to us.
Because they keep partially because they keep our immune system in check. So, all right, this is another. I don't have any concrete evidence for this one either, but it's something I've noticed over the years. People oftentimes clean their monitor too much. And what I mean by that is a lot of these animals, unless they're living in pristine conditions in the wild that I've never heard of, their water is not purified and filtered.
Right.
And a lot of times they're exposed to, bacteria and whatnot. And in captivity, we remove that. And it seems that their immune system almost acts reflexively, where it's like, okay, well, we don't really have to fight anything off. So it kind of just takes a back seat. Whereas like my Niles, I could clean their water every single 15, 20 minutes, and they would just go in there and shit it up anyway. That's just what they do. They're horrible creatures. Horrible creatures. But I noticed that they do better when I clean it less, which seems odd. But if you think about it, a lot of these animals that live in very localized areas, they are defecating in the water that they live in. Nobody's filtering it.
Right.
There's microorganisms and other organisms that are taking care of some of it, but they're still exposing themselves to bacteria. And also got this from the late Burt Langerwerf as well for his Australian water dragons, where they find them in the wild. They're in these ponds that they're defecating in and then drinking and then defecating and drinking. And he found that when he cleaned their water too much, they actually got sick versus leaving their water kind of nasty and then cleaning it less frequently. They actually were healthier. So I think sometimes we also, because we're human and we go, well, you got to wash your hands, you got to do this, you got to do that to keep clean. being a sterile situation for a lot of wild animals, because that's what they are, they're wildlife, is not actually beneficial, because their immune systems and their bodies have, for millions of years, have run with we have to fight something, we have to fight something, we have to fight something. So that's when I read the pinworm paper and a couple other papers, it was interesting because that's the same premise, that we've eliminated some of our own immune system's natural, we would be fighting parasites all the time, as you know, when we were naked running around with sticks, we would be fighting parasites all the time. But now that
wait a minute, we're not supposed to do that no more.
No, you're not supposed to be running around naked with sticks.
Oh, my neighbors will be very happy to hear that.
But you know, your immune system starts doing weird things when, for the last however many years, it's been supposed to be fighting these parasites. Well, now it's got nothing to fight. Right. So the paper actually
in the dirt, grow up laying in the dirt and not having to wash your hands all the time, so you naturally ingest some things. I mean, that's the way to build a really good immune system versus now everybody's like hand sanitizer.
So I do stuff like that all the time. My wife, God bless her, she deals with my crazy ass, but she'll be like, you're cleaning animals and eating a sandwich, that's disgusting. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
Building your immune system. You're going to be super strong.
So I don't get the flu. I don't get respiratory issues. Even when, knock on wood, I'm not trying to put negative crap out into the juju of the universe, but even COVID, I was always working because I never got it. It was just something that. It's just something that, and I know some people in the reptile community did, but a lot didn't. And I think part of the reason, I've never gotten food poisoning, but I've also always been around this nasty stuff, because by definition, you're dealing with nasty stuff with animals. Yeah. I think it does temper your immune system quite a bit. And I feel like with the reptiles, it's the same thing. If their immune system isn't tempered at least a little bit, you can clean them into being sick almost, which is a crazy concept for most people, but it does seem to be the case.
So I think
go ahead.
I think a point you were trying to get at that we may have lost, and I might be wrong, but when we clean it up so much that our immune system then turns and attacks other beneficial things that we have going on. Yeah.
That's what the paper was suggesting, that allergies that people were seeing, because and I know, Mike, you've got a couple years on me, but a lot of kids, even when I was really young, didn't have nut allergies, and then all of a sudden we saw an influx of nut allergies, and we've seen a huge influx in autoimmune issues just across the board. And part of what the paper was saying was that they were correlating the reduction in parasites and basically the backing off of our immune system constantly having to work. It's still constantly working, but now it's unintentionally targeting your own cells or histamine receptors, or stuff that it's not supposed to be targeting, because it never got the signal to stop fighting, and there's just what it was supposed to be fighting is no longer there.
So it's fighting something.
Yeah. And it was a very interesting paper, but there were, pinworms can be beneficial for you. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. I don't really want to give myself parasites, but there's a lot of things. The natural world is
pinworms. You don't.
But
when I was a kid, I had them, and it was absolutely terrible. I don't wish that on anyone. I was 5 years old. And I used to chew my nails all the time after playing in the dirt outside, catching lizards, whatever. So I got pinworms, and my mom had to take me to the doctor. And
it's funny when you think back to the 40s and 50s. Hey, Joey's got chicken pox. Send your kids over to Joey's house. So you would get that, and you naturally you'd fight that off. And even back then, weight loss, people would actually put segment of tapeworm down a kid's throat to lose weight, and we kind of get away from that. I mean, the whole bloodletting with leeches and stuff, we kind of got away from all of that stuff, which, obviously worked. But nowadays, we're a different society, and, we think that that's dirty and not clean. And, but it had benefits back then. Again, just like the grocery store food, we've poisoned ourselves with that crap for so many years that we've built up to it. Does that make it good for us? Not necessarily, but is it bad? It is bad now because we've gotten so far away from natural diets and fish out of the ponds and free range chickens, that now everything's pumped with hormones and antibiotics and stuff that, we've done ourselves an injustice over the many years,
Yeah. And I mean, that's a very true statement, especially with food. People, I think we're so detached from where it comes from, how we get it. And I mean, I ate, not to shit on my nieces and nephews, but like they, oh, you need to go get food, where you go to the grocery store. I'm like, no, the grocery store doesn't have it. They like completely perplexed, and they're all younger, so they don't, but the grocery store doesn't know that was an actual animal at one point. Like it was a living, breathing thing. I definitely horrified my one niece when she was like, wait, that was the turkey I was petting like 2 weeks ago? I'm like, yeah, it was him.
Yep.
And I said, but he serves his purpose. He's fed you. We didn't waste anything. Everything goes to either, all scraps to the alligator, or the dogs will eat the raw bones or whatever. And then the rest goes in compost. I'm like, so there's no waste. I'm like, and that's part of the life cycle.
Yeah.
Make sure he has a great life. Everything was good, and we euthanize him humanely, and that's the best you can do in the natural world. The natural world is not pleasant. It's not fair, and it's definitely not nice. It is. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is.
It is. Yep. Well, we're going on to about 2 hours now. 2 hours and
sorry.
10. No. Andrew, we can. I mean, one of these days when you actually do get up to Monitor Fest, we're going to talk and talk and talk, and 8 hours is going to go by so fast.
I will go this year. I will make sure I go this year.
Absolutely. It'll be our 5th year anniversary, so we'll celebrate with you, Andrew. But
absolutely.
With that being said, we're 2 hours and 10 minutes into this, so man, great discussion. Thank you, Kat, for filling in for Jen, and thank you for coming on, Andrew. We're going to do another 2-hour show soon enough here, but from Kat, myself, Andrew, join USARK and help us continue to keep doing what we love, and they're coming after us, and again, I gotta mention, captive breeding, is really good for conservation. So, don't fall into the trap saying that like we're not doing our part with this. Conservation through commercialization is a real thing, and I mean, I got to just say, I don't mean to toot my own horn. I try to be as humble as I can. But, again, Varanus togienus, an animal that has never been bred in captivity. I captive bred these animals. They're rarely coming in. So I'm hoping that, through my work efforts with these animals, that we'll continue to keep and love these animals and not have to rape nature, for these animals. And that's a prime example of just one tiny little aspect of, what's going on in the world with reptiles and monitor lizards and stuff. So, you should probably stay out of our way and let us do our thing and really help the natural world. So with that being said, Kat, thank you. MJ, thank you for this platform to spew my garbage. And Andrew, I really appreciate you coming on and really hitting us with a lot of knowledge today. So,
thank you, Andrew.
Yeah,
you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do it again. So thank you guys very much. Awesome. And we're out, guys. Stay behind the scenes.